Good evening, folks. Welcome to tonight's special City Council meeting. It is July the 8th. This meeting is officially called to order. I kindly ask our city clerk to please take the roll call.
Bowering?
Here.
Bruno?
Here.
Ruby?
Here.
Kilberg?
Here.
Kasserag?
Here.
Maladra?
Here.
Marks?
Here.
Mayor?
Here.
Paschke?
Here.
Swanson?
Here. We begin our council meeting tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite our Director of Community Development, Mr. David DeGroot, to please lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. DeGroot. We'll jump right in, folks. Item 2A is to consider ordinance number 2024-25, granting, one, a variation from section 11-4A-11 to allow a parking lot and entrance along State Street. Two, relief from the standards and specifications for City of Geneva's East State Street corridor ornamental lighting area to allow for two Cobra-style light fixtures. And third, site plan approval for a proposed parking lot at 230 East State Street.
So moved.
Motion by Bowering, seconded by Paschke. Ms. Dawkins.
Okay, so the subject property, which is located at the southwest corner of East State Street and Kane Street, incorporates two parcels. The western parcel is improved with a two-story office building constructed in 1867 and occupied by the applicant Coldwell Banker. The eastern parcel sits vacant. The existing asphalt parking lot is unstriped and includes access points for ingress and egress at the north end of the site on East State Street and on the east end of the site on Kane Street. In an effort to promote future development on the vacant parcel while also improving parking for the overall site, the applicant is proposing to reconstruct and expand the parking lot. The proposed parking lot would include 20 standard parking stalls and one ADA compliant stall. Modifications would also include widening the drive aisle to promote improved mobility across the site, updated landscaping to appropriately screen the parking lot from the public way, and updating parking lot lighting to enhance visibility and safety. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on June 27th, the Commission unanimously recommended that the City Council approve the project. With us this evening, we do have Director DeGroot, and we also have a representative from Coldwell Banker to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the dais for either Director DeGroot? Well, let's begin with Director DeGroot first. How's that? Very well. Are we prepared to vote? Very well. A simple majority is required. City Clerk Kellick, please take the roll.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
With 10 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 0 alderpersons absent, item 2A, ordinance 2024-25 has been dispatched and approved by this council. Item 2B, consider ordinance 2024-26 of the City of Geneva, Kane County, Illinois, approving a tax increment redevelopment plan and redevelopment project for the Southeast Master Plan redevelopment project area.
So moved.
Bruno makes the motion. Bowering makes the second. And we'll turn it over to Ms. Dawkins.
Mayor, if I may, I would
Oh.
like to just do an introduction for all three
Absolutely.
of the ordinances.
B, C, and D, yes.
Yes, okay. So in 2012, the Southeast Master Plan was adopted, identifying tax increment financing as a key funding strategy for plan implementation. Review of the Southeast Master Plan, also called TIF4, Redevelopment Project Area Eligibility Report and Redevelopment Plan and Project, the study, began in March 2024. The redevelopment project area consists of approximately 20 tax parcels and is roughly bounded by Roosevelt Road, Fabian Parkway, and the Dupain-Kane County border. And Kirk Road. The study concludes that the area is eligible for TIF designation as a blighted area for vacant land and a conservation area for improved land. The Joint Review Board, comprised of representatives from certain taxing districts, including the city, and a public member, met on April 30th, 2024. The JRB submitted a recommendation to approve the Southeast Master Plan redevelopment project area, and a public hearing was conducted at the June 3rd City Council meeting and included a presentation on the study findings from SB Friedman Development Advisors, as well as public testimony. To realize the expressed goals and objectives for the future economic development of the city, it is in the best interest of the citizens of the City of Geneva to implement a tax increment allocation financing pursuant to the Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act. The formation of TIF 4 requires the approval of 3 separate ordinances, each requiring a simple majority of affirmative votes for passage. So before you right now is ordinance 2024-26, approving a tax increment redevelopment plan and redevelopment project for the Southeast Master Plan redevelopment project area. The next ordinance designates the Southeast Master Plan redevelopment project area pursuant to the Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act. And the third and final ordinance is adopting a tax increment allocation financing for the Southeast Master Plan redevelopment project area. So with that, we also do have Director Kathleen Timoshenko in the audience if there are some questions. Mayor?
For the council and community's benefit, Ms. Dawkins' preamble, while applying to items 2B, C, and D, those items will be voted on separately. So we are on item 2B, ordinance 2024-26. Questions from the dais? City Clerk Killick. Alderperson Swanson.
It's not a question. I just wanted to make a statement, if I
Certainly.
could. So, thank you. The purpose of the proposed TIF ordinance before us is to provide funding to aid in the industrial development of the 297 acres of land in the southeast area of Geneva. This represents a significant percentage of the remaining undeveloped land under the jurisdiction of Geneva. A proposal to develop another 55 acres of land adjacent to the TIF area was approved 2 weeks ago, giving the green light to construct a 700,000 square foot warehouse building with 119 truck docks. The ordinance presented to us tonight for approval includes recitals of many of the events leading up to the decision we are asked to make today. I supported many of these interim decisions, including the approval of funding an independent TIF eligibility study, which was performed. It is the findings section of the resolution, as well as the specific conditions that were cited to show the area to be eligible for TIF designation, that I do not agree with. In the findings section, section 3, there is a statement that the City Council finds and determines 7 different assertions that allow this to be designated a TIF district. I agree with 5 of the 7 statements, but take exception to paragraphs 3B and 3C. Paragraph 3B states that the council has determined the project area to be a conservation area for improved land and a blighted area for vacant land. I studied the SB Friedman report, and I do not agree with this determination. I think some of the factors used to support it strain credibility, in my opinion. For example, it states that the area is subject to chronic flooding that contributes to downstream flooding of the Mississippi River due to runoff from the vacant parcels. In our Tale of Two Parcels story, the adjacent parcel of 55 acres that will soon become Venture Park is not subject to this chronic flooding, even though that vacant land drains into the same watershed. In fact, the stormwater report for Venture Park states the following, and I quote, "The site does not appear to be located within or adjacent to a designated floodplain or floodway," end quote. How can the stormwater reports for 2 adjacent vacant properties that go to the same watershed have 2 very different conclusions? It strains credibility. Another factor that is cited is the lack of EAV growth in the TIF area. The chart to support this assertion states that the EAV of the TIF area underperformed both the average of Geneva growth, EAV growth, and the Consumer and Price Index in 3 of the 5 years, 2017 through 2022. There was not an analysis of EAV growth on a parcel type basis, and by that I mean residential, commercial, industrial, provided in the chart. I quickly checked the EAV history of similar size industrial buildings in the area, similar in size with the same number of corresponding truck docks. One property in Geneva, very similar type of building, industrial, failed this EAV test in all 5 of the years presented by SB Friedman. And in fact, the property tax generated by this building is lower now than it was in 2014. That's not a great statement for EAV growth or tax growth in a TIF district. Another similar building about a mile west on Fabian, which is in Batavia, but very close and very similar in size, generated $228,000 of tax billings in 2022. Same building paid $231,000 in 2010. Again, not a real good trend. Tax data from these two pins makes me wonder if a TIF funding structure is the appropriate mechanism for this area, given the volatility of taxes paid and the apparent lack of EAV growth in the type of buildings being proposed in the TIF area. Moving on to other factors cited in the TIF eligibility study. There were structures that were identified as deteriorated and or below code. However, some of them disappear if the MIF project is built. For example, the old Bork Farm was one of the 3 structures that was identified as deteriorated or below code. In the MIF plan, it becomes a retention pond. So what difference does the existence of that one building matter, really? Again, it strains credibility. Section 3C, and that was all in 3B, Section 3C is an affirmation of the but-for argument for the TIF resolution. And I cannot agree with the portion of the resolution that states the following, and this is in the resolution. Development through investment by private enterprise is not reasonably anticipated without the adoption of the redevelopment project and plan. Again, that strains credibility. There's development occurring to the north, to the east, to the west, and to the south. In fact, the 55 acres that are adjacent to the property are being developed without TIF financing. The City of Geneva Economic Incentive Policy recommends that recruitment of businesses to develop the Southeast Master Plan be tailored to, and this is right out of the Economic Incentive Policy, food science, research and development, pharmaceutical, or medical device manufacturers as a top priority. None of these target markets seem to be identified in the MIF project. Instead, we're moving forward with 8 to 12 large industrial/warehouse structures that could be manufacturing. I think we could do better. It will surprise no one that I oppose the TIF resolution, and I cannot in good conscience vote to approve it. The factors used to prove the area qualifies for TIF status may provide us with the necessary legal reasons to proceed, but I do not see strong, compelling reasons why we should proceed. I believe the development would in fact occur on some of the parcels well before the expiration of the TIF district 23 years from now. I think we might regret building out this entire area of Geneva with a handful of warehousing structures and should pursue the growth strategies that were envisioned in our planning documents over the last few decades. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderperson Ruby, then Alderperson Maladra.
Thank you. I would like to ask, is the letter from Jack Bentley, the Executive Director and Community Lawyer for the Citizen Advocacy Center that was sent this afternoon, is that in the record already?
No, it is not in the record. Alderperson Ruby?
Can I request that it become part of the record? Or do I need to physically read it for it to become part of the minutes or the record?
It can be part of the record if you so desire,
I would-
unless anyone objects. It's part of tonight's record. Yeah, floor is
Okay,
yours still. excuse me.
thank you.
Yeah.
So yes, I would like this on the record, and I would also like to, since public comment isn't allowed at this stage, I would like to verbalize some of the points in this letter that I think are extremely valid and things that I would like answers to. So we'll start with several blatant violations of requirements for the appropriation of TIF funding per laws of the state of Illinois and the City of Geneva Code. Law requires that a TIF be approved only if it cannot be reasonably anticipated that the subject property be developed without the adoption of the redevelopment plan. No evidence has been presented to the people of Geneva to meet this legal threshold. No feasibility study has been conducted, no credible case has been presented, and the land has been unused by the purported developer for nearly 6 years. As an aside, an 800-acre contiguous parcel was developed without TIF funding by the same developer for this proposed project. The proposed TIF District 4 does not meet state law requirements for blight necessary to permit the creation of a TIF district. Land cannot be deemed vacant if the land has been used for commercial agricultural purposes within 5 years. And we have been presented with the opinion that this land has been farmed regularly every year of your ownership. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. First, I'm going to finish with this letter. Despite the assertion by V3 in their report dated December 6, 2023, that the property is prone to flooding, there is no evidence to support this assertion. More egregiously, the parcels contained within the property bear a 0% flooding designation per the Kane County Assessor, which directly contradicts V3's report and SB Friedman's position. Therefore, in order to approve the pending TIF district, the Geneva City Council would have to contravene the Kane County Assessor. Even assuming that V3 is correct and the Kane County Assessor is wrong, state law nonetheless requires that any impairment factor, like flooding, be reasonably distributed throughout the vacant part of the redevelopment project area. No such evidence exists. Notably, Geneva's own zoning code requires an existing tree survey and preservation plan. By their own admission, the company MIF hired to perform the survey did not complete it. The so-called full tree assessment prepared by V3 companies on behalf of MIF dated November 19, 2018, indicates that this was not a full tree inventory or survey. Additionally, it is known that several trees on the northwest sector of the property are completely unaccounted for in the November 19, 2018 report. Approval of this TIF district would show open disregard for state and local laws and a lack of care for residents' meaningful concerns. Misuse of TIF can affect a local government's ability to adequately fund its schools, parks, and other vital services, not only due to reappropriation of revenue, but also due to uncollected property tax revenue. On behalf of the residents and citizens of Geneva, the Citizen Advocacy Center urges the Geneva City Council to reject or postpone the approval of TIF District 4 until these concerns outlined herein are more adequately and thoroughly addressed. So that's it for the letter. I would love some feedback, some responses to the questions and assertions made in this letter presumably by staff, or whoever would be the appropriate
Certainly.
person to respond.
I do have a response if the council will indulge me. The city is indeed in receipt of the reference letter, which the alderperson mentioned. It was emailed to the city council at 2:05 this afternoon by Mr. Jack Bentley, Executive Director of the Citizen Advocacy Center based in Elmhurst, Illinois. Mr. Bentley's letter, while very much welcome, is replete with tax increment financing tropes, wanting of any defensible accusations, and bereft of the knowledge surrounding the school district, the library district, the Wabansie Community College District, and the Joint Review Board's unanimous vote on creating and supporting this TIF. Respectfully, the letter in question is meritless and should be given no weight, granted no measure, and allowed no impact on our consideration this evening. Alderperson Maladra.
Oh, do I still have the floor?
No, I had the floor. That was my response to
Okay.
your statement.
Okay, well, I would like to be in queue then for, not in response to you, I just have more to say.
Oh, forgive me. I did not know that. Alderperson Maladra?
There's a lot here. I heard a lot of specific questions and concerns. The one thing that I'll react to, though, is the statement that we're ignoring the law. It's not like this agreement was put together by a bunch of amateurs. I believe that the city's legal representatives have put in a great deal of time on this. I think they've been over it with a fine-tooth comb, knowing how careful they need to be. And to insist that they're just blatantly ignoring the law is to call in question their own professional character. That aside, I will accept that not only does it meet, as Alderperson Swanson pointed out, the law, I believe we're ignoring the fact that it also meets our strategic objectives and priorities. It's difficult for me to sit here and say that I'm confident that over the next 23 years, we'll see this area develop without assistance from the city, because for the past 20-plus, we have not. It's difficult for me to look ahead because I lack the crystal ball that evidently some other people have. I talked about this when we were talking about the development itself. I think that change is hard. I think that in general, this is not an unexpected change. I think that it's in our responsibility to look at this in the long-term interests of the city of Geneva. We need to rise above the short-term passions of today. In fact, if we don't rise above the short-term passions of today, let's consider the things that we look at as part of the Geneva fabric that would not exist today. Concerns about traffic, concerns about growth, concerns about impact to property values were raised throughout the discussions relating to the development of the Randall Road corridor. They were raised years ago when the Ridgewood subdivision was being developed. They were raised years ago when the East Side McDonald's was being developed, and they were raised more recently when Emma's Landing was developed. In each of those instances, we stopped to say, we as a council, stopped to say what's in the best long-term interests of the city. Our strategic plan in this area has called for light industrial development. This is light industrial development. I mentioned before that I was concerned about warehousing, but we've done nothing to separate zoning for warehouses, and it is an allowable use in light industry. I realize that Alderperson Swanson would not support a TIF no matter what, but I do sense in comments from some people that if this were a different type of development, that it would be okay. And to my way of looking at it, this is a development of light industry, which meets our objectives to diversify the tax base. It's consistent with plans that we have had in place for decades, not static plans, but plans that we've regularly updated. And TIF, although not perfect, is one of the few tools that we can use to provide incentive for development to take place. To take a look at the Venture Park property and compare it to the MIF property, I think is a bit of apples and oranges, just as I believe that property on my side of Allen Drive is different than property on the other side of Allen Drive. TIF is not perfect, but it's the only significant option available to the city for this purpose. We need to provide incentive for development here, in part to get the diversification of the tax base that I referenced earlier, but also it's been my belief since I started working with the city that the development of Couch Road Extended is critical to our long-term best interests. The traffic that we're talking about creating, we're not going to create. That traffic is already here. You can see the armies of Amazon trucks going down Roosevelt Road every morning. Couch Road Extended provides a path for that traffic to get to I-88 that's not Kirk Road. I'm not saying that it's going to take traffic off of Kirk Road. Of course there's going to be traffic on Kirk Road. But without Couch Road Extended, Kirk Road becomes the best option available, whereas Couch Road Extended is a better option. And that's an option that no developer can foot on their own, and the city of Geneva cannot foot on their own. It's also an extension that's necessary for the inner workings of the parcel, which I think is part of what makes it different than Venture Park. The Venture Park development, all of the incoming and outgoing traffic is going to be on Kirk Road. So I support this. I support this TIF because it enables us to achieve a long-standing goal. Yes, I'm concerned about warehousing, but as long as warehousing is an allowable use in light industry, I think that that's what we have to go with if it turns out to be warehousing. For us to say I'll provide TIF financing if I get the specific business that I'm after, I think is to do the community a disservice. I think that this has long-term benefits to us in a number of ways, and so I support it.
Alderperson Bruno, Alderperson Kilburg, Alderperson Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't repeat much of what Alderperson Maladra said, but the thing that really sticks out in my head for this parcel of this size, is the Couch Road extension. A parcel this size with single egress off of Fabian, I don't think is sensible, and given the grade changes, that is a crushingly expensive improvement to be made. And I see the TIF as the only way that we can accomplish that. So I support this. Thanks.
Alderperson Kilburg, then Alderperson Mayor.
I guess tonight, we're finding out that we can agree to disagree. And I don't need to repeat some of the things that have already been shared as it relates to the tree survey, the traffic study, flooding, and the questions or the comments regarding whether this is blighted or not. I think what I can say is that development will take place without a TIF. And I think if we look at Venture, if we look at the Bullock project, if we look at Hillwood, all those projects evolved and took place in open areas that were vacant for 30 years within the last 3 or 4 years. So to say that this is essential for the development of the TIF 4 properties, I think could be questioned. One thing I'm seeing is that one thing is for certain, warehouses seem to attract more warehouses. And if you look to the west of this property, TIF 4 property, you have warehouses to the west. You have warehouses to the south. You have warehouses now to the north. And you have warehouses to the west. So one thing is certain, that more warehouses will block other types of development that we discussed and was referenced by Alderman Swanson in the Geneva Economic Development Incentive Policy, looking for food science, R&D, pharmaceutical, medical devices, et cetera. You know, we referenced the Judicial Review Board, and I guess it was a short meeting, I understand. And was there sufficient due diligence that was given to this? Now, at our last meeting, we questioned our own P&Z if it was within our purview to question their recommendation. I guess it's within the purview of council members to also question the findings of the Judicial Review Board. And that also not all members that were eligible to participate in the Judicial Review Board were in attendance, and I'll stand corrected if that's not the case.
That's correct.
My last point, and the one that I think is important, is that as a council and as a city, we're looking at a number of fairly significant financial issues that the city could be involved with over the next couple of decades during the length of this TIF. TIF 4 is a sizable investment on the part of the city as well as on the part of the developers. The other significant question that is still unresolved would be Prairie States and electrical rates and the implication of legislation here in Illinois and how that will impact Geneva specifically because of our participation in Prairie States. The third and final point that could involve significant dollars and could impact our credit rating potentially, or the finances of the city moving forward into 2030 and beyond, would be a facility studies that we're undertaking currently. We have a consultant that's providing information, and the city will be looking at over the next 6 months the possibility of coming to the community with a referendum as it relates to necessary facilities. You know, I'm not questioning the need for these facilities. I'm just questioning, as it relates to these other financial considerations that we're facing, how will TIF 4 impact potentially getting a referendum through this community? And I don't have the answer, and I'll support those referendums, but the thing is I'm questioning whether some of these decisions that we're making today could have ramifications and impact decisions in the community down the road. So with that, I'll be casting a no vote, obviously, as it relates to the TIF. And again, I know that the passage of this TIF is probably a foregone conclusion, but I think it's important that if you disagree, that you voice your concerns, and that this is a forum to do that. And I hope that as we leave the council chambers this evening, I hope that we can agree that we can disagree and move forward with other important issues as it relates to the city. Thank you.
Alderperson Mayor.
Quite the opposite. I'm very excited about this TIF. I think that what's being mischaracterized in so many of these points of view is that we're spending the TIF on the actual developments of the warehousing buildings. This is to provide the infrastructure to those buildings that we would have to provide for another development as well, and would need to be paid for and would burden the project, whatever it be, with a very high infrastructure cost. The thing that's great about this TIF is that while it does defer the other taxing bodies' collection of the property tax share during its lifetime, is that it doesn't bring any students. It doesn't bring any wear and tear to those taxing districts. This is for industrial development, not for housing, and therefore the amount of load that it's going to put onto those taxing bodies, which, being realistic, is primarily an educational cost, is the lion's share of our tax bill. I've sat with our development director for some very good meetings, as well as our administrative lead and with our community development lead, and talked through all the different aspects of this project and how the funding of the TIF will be released. And everyone at this dais has had that opportunity as well. And we all of us that agree that this is a necessary function to be able to develop this land, because Couts Road extension is very expensive. It's not like putting into the development a feeder road just to serve that. This is going to be a throughway through our community, down Fabian Road, out the Bliss Connector and to the highway, also down Kirk Road, away from Geneva. It's a very good thing. And with further trucking development happening in St. Charles and already established there, being able to divert this traffic and put it onto Couts and directly into Fabian is a very good thing, in my opinion. It removes the traffic from the core of Geneva. And I think that's what we all want to do. The mayor brought up some developments over time that have caused, or maybe it was Alderperson Maladra brought up. It's funny that he brought up McDonald's. That happened to be a development that was approved during my dad's tenure as alderman, I believe. And he would come home and he was so bent out of shape about it because he was worried that kids would cross the road to get to McDonald's. He was losing sleep. It was really a rough time. But it got built and McDonald's is there, and kids don't cross State Street to get to McDonald's. They get their parents to take them, or they're old enough to cross. I haven't experienced any bad situations, and my dad was worrying for nothing in that case. I think that that's much the same here. I think that people don't easily go out on Kirk Road to go shopping or to cross that cross to their neighbor's house. You don't necessarily want to do that except at a signalized intersection. And, you know, I think that the signal at Fabian and Kirk has been shown by KDOT to be able to accept this kind of traffic, as is what we're doing to Couts Road to make it constructed properly for truck traffic. We've been working on this for quite some time since I've been on council, and many of the people that are opposed to this were supportive of Couts Road being firmed up for semi-traffic. So it flies in the face of that to not support this, which we have a specialist who has conducted an analysis of the project funding and has found that there's gaps that need to be filled and can be filled by TIF. What we have at our disposal as a tool, as a body, is the TIF financing, or we could give tax credits, or we could give, but we only tax 1%, so that's not going to amount to very much in a very long period of time. So this really is the way that a city council builds infrastructure out to a project. It would be the same if we were doing residential or if we were doing any other type. This is what the strategic plan shows. I've agreed with this strategic plan since I took this position. When I read through it thoroughly, I think that there's also a myth that there's no industrial in any other area, but quite the contrary. I mean, as Geneva was developed, the industrial was put on the edge of town. So Burgess Norton is on Western Avenue. That was the western border of Geneva. The industrial that's down by Wheeler Park, that was the edge of the neighborhood there, and up against a park. And then you've got Houghton Mifflin over off of Batavia Avenue that has loading docks right up against a residential neighborhood. Richardson Electronics, same thing. These are the type of tenants that we could have at this industrial park. It's shown as big, empty rectangles, but it can be just about anything when we approve this TIF and when we approve the PUD. We've already approved the PUD. So I have very positive opinions about this, and I don't think that the development of this area can be compared to the DuPage Business Park, which was very quickly put into a PUD situation where developers could come in and build right away without worrying about coming before a body and getting approval. Passing this will definitely help us move forward with our plans to improve our tax base. Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak? Oh, Alderperson Bowring?
I also will attempt to keep this short. I voiced many of my feelings about the overall project at the meeting when we were discussing the development itself. Along with a number of my colleagues, I do think that the TIF is a very important tool. I see the role of government, including local government, as essentially doing projects like this, stepping in to fill a gap that private industry is not going to do. You look at something, you determine, and I understand there's disagreement, but you determine that there is a community interest in something happening, and then you try to help that happen. That's what I see happening with this TIF. Again, I think that it helps us achieve strategic plan goals that were in place before I came onto this council. I think if there has been significant doubt about those strategic plans, there has been plenty of time for residents or members of the council to voice those and try to change those plans. And I've not experienced that as a constituent or as a city council person. In fact, what I've seen since coming on to the city council just over a year ago is that projects related to this, like electrical infrastructure improvements, have been consistently, unanimously supported by this council. So I think that's good, but I guess it does leave me wondering a little bit why there was unanimous support for those projects if, in the end, there's not unanimous support for the TIF, that is the tool that will help the city recoup expenses for its infrastructure outlays in this area. Again, it's already been stated, but I will reiterate, my understanding, having talked with city staff extensively and done my own research, is that TIF is actually the way to have the lowest risk to the city possible, because we are not shouldering the burden of all of these infrastructure improvements, not knowing if we will see enough increase in utility consumption to offset them. So by doing this, we're sharing the cost with a private entity, which actually reduces our risk. I think TIF is just complicated enough that if you haven't sat down to really understand it, it can feel confusing and a little scary. And I totally understand that. I certainly had to spend time learning about it when it was something I needed to be able to make decisions about. I guess I will say, along with Alderperson Mayer, I am excited about this. I am not opposed to warehouses. I think manufacturing is an important part of our economy. I would say storing goods is also an important part of our economy, and I think all of us rely on that. I don't think this is going to have detrimental impacts. Again, as Alderperson Maladra stated, none of us have a crystal ball. We're making the best decisions we can with the information we have. But I think that this is a very positive thing, and I am pleased to see us at the point of coming to a vote about it. Thank you.
Alderperson Paschke.
I also support this. I do understand that TIF is a complex concept that's also been maligned in the public sphere. I think maybe there's a history in some places of misuse of TIF, but like other alder people have pointed out, this is a tool that the city has that will help us meet significant goals with lower risk, including our strategic plan, diversifying the tax base, getting us the infrastructure we need in this area without the stress on the other taxing bodies. I agree with others that staff and the report that we got from the consultants provided adequate answers to many of the issues raised and concerns that people had. And I would agree with Alderperson Bowering that I understand that we're going to disagree, but for alder people to have supported other steps along the way and think that leaving the city hanging with those costs on a hope that there's going to be development there feels very irresponsible to me. So yes, I support this.
Anyone else who has not yet spoken wish to do so before I recognize Alderperson Ruby? Alderperson Ruby, the floor is yours.
Thank you. There have been a few comments about the Joint Review Board. I'm curious, amongst my colleagues, if any of you have looked at the 304 website and seen what they have to say about TIF funding, what's currently on their website. It's very much against the TIF, and I was very surprised that the school board supported this. I reached out to somebody that I know, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but bottom line, I was told, don't mistake our voting yes on this as support for the TIF. And the person also shared how they just got beat up, chewed up, and spit out the last time there was a TIF vote. They worked their tails off and lost. So basically, no steam to fight this fight, and it was easier just to say sure. So hearsay, take it for what it's worth. My point is, you're using that as, or people are using that as proof that the school's on board. And I just wanted to point out that that doesn't necessarily mean that they're on board. All of this information, people are taking reports, votes, everything at face value. And I think there are a lot of agendas going on, and I believe that a lot of the things I've heard tonight just sound naive to me. Nobody does have a crystal ball. I fully agree with that. I just argue the opposite end argument. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. Why should we invest millions of dollars in making a multi-million-dollar company, giving a multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar, correct me, company funding for either 23, 35, or 47 years? We're not looking at short-term. This is absolutely long-term. And that's what's so frightening about it. We don't know how long this is going to last. It could be nearly a 50-year commitment that we make tonight. And I don't feel that making this decision without answers feels like due diligence. You know, the letter that I shared from Jack Bentley, there were 6 unique points in this letter, and I asked you to address it, and you did, which I appreciate. With all due respect,
Sure.
your response I found very vague, and it did not answer any of the 6 assertions, and if it did, it's a he said, she said situation. So this is from a lawyer. So we've got a lawyer telling us one thing, we've got the mayor telling us another, or city staff, whoever, pick your person. This all just feels like he said, she said to me, and I am frustrated that I am not being presented with findings of fact so that I can make educated decisions, and because of that, I adamantly oppose this endeavor, and I think we are biting off way more than we can chew, and I think that we're going to regret it. And I apologize if I offended anyone. That was not my intention. I'm just sharing how I see it. I know we all see things differently, and I knew a few weeks ago, tonight's vote is going to be 7-3, just like it was the last few weeks, so no surprises there. Thank you.
Alderperson Kosrog has not yet been recognized, so we will recognize him, and the others who have not yet spoken who wish to do so will recognize you prior to recognizing Bowering and Maladra in that order.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to stay silent, and I'll still keep it short like we're all trying to do, but, you know, I think I was offended by what Alderperson Ruby just said. And I do have an agenda, and that agenda is to make Geneva a better place for everybody that lives here. That's why I put myself out there to be elected, and that's why I come every Monday night. And I think I do my due diligence. I respect everybody else on this council to do their due diligence and come up with their answers. And I can't help but respond to the naivety of this with asking for answers when this has literally been over 20 years in the making. And now at the last minute, answers aren't being provided well enough for one alderperson here or 3. So I'm not ashamed to say I have an agenda. I'm not ashamed to say that I trust in the professionals that we have on our staff and the companies that we hire and their opinions. And I respect people that vote against it, no problem. But I will be supporting it. And I want to say I appreciate all the work that all the previous alderpersons have put in, as well as professional staff, as well as the people and the citizens of the city of Geneva that have provided input into the Southeastern Master Plan, into our own master plan, and yeah, I'm proud to support this. I think this has been decades in the making, literally, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition. Thank you.
Alderperson Marks, then Bowering, then Maladra.
I've been on the council almost, 15 years for sure, going on 16. We've been working on this project since I was here. It was started, you could see it was started, the groundwork was there. Couch Road is important. The Joint Review Board is if an organization on that board had a problem with it, that's where their vote is. They chose to vote yes, they voted yes. They have to hold that up. I don't have to answer for their saying yes or no. If they said no, we have to take that into consideration.
They voted yes publicly. Hearsay has no place here. They voted yes, they were for it. I've talked to people in this town that are for this, are very much for this. They want to see this development. They think it's going to help it. I've seen the work done by staff. I've read all those reports. Yeah, there's questions. There's always going to be questions with a development of this size. There's no question about it. A development this size is always going to have unanswered questions. Most of my questions have been answered enough that I feel comfortable with moving ahead with this. Couch Road is one of the major reasons to move ahead with this. I don't think the city or the developer could get all the infrastructure out there without some type of financing like this. We passed a few months ago $30 million in bonds to put electricity out there. What's it to put then water, sewer, and everything else out there? That was $30 million just to get electric out there that we're taking care of. This is the right tool for this kind of a project. It may not be the right project, but it's the tool we have for projects like this. And I'm fully supporting this vote tonight, and I believe this is the way to go. And I've watched this thing grow for almost 20 years, because I sat out in the council, if you remember, Mayor, for a number of years out there and watched this before I ran for office. And I watched it for another 4 or 5 years before that. I've seen the councils work on this and struggle with it, adjust it, move it to the betterment of the city, and I think it is in the right road of the city. And to say that everybody in the city is against this, I don't believe that, because I've had people tell me they think this is the way to go. So we've always moved, unfortunately, we have always put, industry and stuff, and every town does it, to their outskirts, because you don't want it affecting the middle of the town. I know we're all not going to agree on this, and that's fine. We don't always agree on everything. As long as we all know that we did our due diligence and feel comfortable with our votes, that's the best we can ask of everybody sitting at this dais tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderperson Bowering, then Alderperson Maladra.
I just have a quick point, and forgive me if I misunderstood, but I believe that, just wanted to say that my understanding of how TIF works lasts for 23 years. It can be extended. However, there is not a continual payment going to any private developer that participates in a TIF. And if it's extended, they don't get more money. The TIF is a tool that allows for a fund to be generated that takes a specific pot of money and uses it to incentivize more and more development. So that money is not going to go to, if this TIF is passed, if it is extended in the future, which is a conversation that another group will decide on far in the future, that money is not going to go to this particular developer in all likelihood. What we see in the other TIFs that we've had in the city is that the money that is generated from the increase in tax revenue, which comes basically when a property goes from a really underutilized use to a higher and better use, that's when you see a big increase in the tax revenue. Then that money goes into the fund and is redistributed to other projects, which is good. That's not a bad thing, and it's not like a continual payout to one individual. I understand it's a complicated enough thing that I'm probably not going to convince anybody here or anybody watching. I just wanted to put that out there because I think there is so much that's misunderstood about TIF, and I'd like for us to be educating the public, even if we disagree, and not representing things that are not factual. Thank you.
Alderperson Maladra.
Thank you. Agreeing to disagree. We're not agreeing to disagree when we say that our lawyers are ignoring the law. We're not agreeing to disagree when we say people on this council have an agenda. And we're not agreeing to disagree when we imply that a public vote of yes isn't really a public vote. What we're doing instead is undermining confidence and faith in local government. I have been on the council almost as long as Rich. Before that, I was on the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee. I was on the library board. I do community service. We work hard on planning so that things don't take us by surprise. I think that warehousing is a little bit of a surprise, but this development, the traffic that's sprung up around it, based on the changing economy, is not a surprise. And it's in our best interest to act rationally and work within our planning framework. That's not an agenda, that's not ignoring the law, that's not pushing anything shady or under the table. It's just a different way of doing what we think is right. Thank you.
Anyone else on the dais? We're on item, not to depress anybody, the first item. Second item, excuse me, item 2B as in boy. This is ordinance number 2024-26. A simple majority is required to pass this ordinance. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Bruno,
Aye.
Ruby,
Nay.
Kilberg,
Nay.
Kasserag,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Paschke,
Aye.
Swanson,
Nay.
Bowery.
Aye.
With 7 votes in the affirmative, 3 votes in the negative, no alderpersons absent, ordinance 2024-26 has been approved by this council. We move to item 2C, consider ordinance 2024-27 of the City of Geneva, Kane County, Illinois, designating the Southeast Master Plan Redevelopment Project area pursuant to the Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Bowering, seconded by Bruno. You'll all recall finally Administrator Dawkins' preamble earlier. That still applies to this item. Happily, I will open the floor up for discussion. Seeing none, sensing none, City Clerk, please take the roll.
Bowery,
Aye.
Bruno,
Aye.
Ruby,
Nay.
Kilberg,
Nay.
Kasserag,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Paschke,
Aye.
Swanson,
Nay.
Ordinance 2024-27 has been approved by this council with 7 affirmative votes, 3 nay votes, and 0 alderpersons absent. Item 2D, ordinance 2024-28. The City of Geneva, Kane County, Illinois, adopting tax increment allocation financing for the Southeast Master Plan Redevelopment Project area is to be considered. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Marks makes the motion, Bruno makes the second. Was he late?
No, I was.
Oh, you're late. Questions from the dais? Yes, Alderperson Ruby.
Thank you. Ms. Dawkins, can you please go back to your preamble? I don't know if I got it exactly right, but you said something about it's in the best interest of the citizens of the city of Geneva? Okay, so, sorry, I'm frustrated, I'm gonna vent for a second. This is where, this is my intention. These things, whether or not it's presented as fact, it's taken as factual when statements like that are publicly stated. And that is my point. Who is to say that this is in the best interest of the citizens? None of us can speak for all of the citizens of the city of Geneva. So for staff to have that opinion is fine. I have no problem with that. What I don't care for is when people on council hear that opinion and take it as fact. And that's all I was trying to say earlier. And back to the crystal ball argument. None of us know.
This is an item 2D as in David. Alderperson Ruby, if you yield to the floor.
Yep, thank you.
Alderperson Maladra, Alderperson Mayor, Alderperson Paschke.
How can we say that this is in the best interests of the city, of the citizens of Geneva? I don't want to get into debating about the weaknesses of government by referendum. You can't have a referendum on everything. We are a representative government. I feel confident that I am representing the best interests of the citizens of Geneva because all of our planning activity is open and public, and the public participates. Or if they choose not to participate, that act itself is acceptance of whatever the plan ends up being. So we have done strategic planning since at least 1997. We have updated our strategic plan on average every 6 years, the whole time. We've had public strategic planning areas for the SEMP. We've had public strategic planning areas for the downtown master plan. Alderperson Swanson doesn't stop reminding me that we had public planning sessions for the Millrace Insight called a charrette. The public is involved in our planning and that framework that we use for decision-making. That's how I can say I'm confident that it represents the best interests of the city of Geneva, because it's consistent with all those plans in which the citizens of Geneva participated, either directly or indirectly by not coming. Thank you.
Alderperson Mayor, then Alderperson Paschke.
So, I mean, I'm bothered too by the comment that was made that there's naivete going on here. I think that council members should be more careful with their words and even their eye rolls when staff was mentioned as a source of confidence for council. I think that the majority of the people on this council have expressed to me that they do have high regard for our staff, and a lawyer is on our staff. A lawyer represents us during these meetings, and the professionals that worked on the reports for TIF 4, that is all shared, all open to the public, and they are professionals in that field. If we're going to start disregarding professionals in their field and what their findings are, and call them, you know, just paperwork, or to insinuate that some gossip that was heard is better than what the official vote on a matter was. It's just not a good path to go down, and I deeply differ and wish that the opposing council members would just let it be. This is good for the city. This is a very good thing for the city, and we're going to go forward with it. And it's not out of naivete, and it's not out of not listening to the arguments made. This area needs funding to support any project that would be built here. Thank you.
Alderperson Paschke.
I'd just like to add my agreement that I take exception to the several accusations that have made that the majority of us on this council have not done our due diligence, and that we are naive, and that we are merely following directions without thinking for ourselves. I think that accusation is deeply offensive, not only to us as individual members elected to serve on this body, but also to the very function of local government. So I do take deep offense to that. I know everybody that I've spoken with on this council has put in hours and hours of work. I know I myself had to do a lot of background reading and research on TIFs and how they work and why this is a good thing. I've read both sides, and I'm offended. I don't think that trying to change a vote or making a public stance at this point by accusing others of not doing their work is an effective way to communicate that we can agree to disagree. I think it's hurtful.
Alderperson Bowering.
So maybe I'm not alone. I'm not offended. I think maybe because I'm not surprised, but I am dismayed at what I see as some efforts to perhaps unwittingly erode the public's confidence in our processes. And I'm reiterating to some extent what Alderperson Maladra said, but I think it's a very pernicious threat. It's fine to disagree. It's fine to state the reasons for your disagreement. But I think the issue, and it's even fine to be emotional. I don't think we have to be solely rational actors. Affect is a part of all human experience. But there's a difference, I think, between asking questions, asking for answers, voicing disagreement, and not accepting any answers to those questions when they're provided, restating them again, and acting like that is proof that the process is broken. That is what I have observed happening. I see the same questions brought up again and again and again. I guess I'm a little bit baffled as to how these questions were not resolved prior to now, because I certainly have gotten ample feedback from every staff member I have requested it from, and I have, like many of my colleagues, sat down with multiple members of our staff to learn more about this project. I do it with many projects. So I guess I would just say I see this as something that is ripping at the idea of representative democracy, which I think is a very important part of our country and an important part of our local structure. And I guess I'm sorry to see that happening at this level, because I don't think it helps. And I think the long-term consequences are very detrimental. And I guess I would just encourage my colleagues to consider that. Is any one particular issue worth maligning our staff, our process, and the rest of us sitting on this council? To me, it's not worth it. I do try my best to be respectful. I may not always meet that mark, but I would request, not out of deference to myself, but really out of deference to the idea of representative democracy and the idea of due process, that my colleagues also aspire to that. Thank you.
To answer Alderperson Ruby's direct questions regarding the letter from Mr. Bentley, I would advise respectfully Mr. Bentley to visit our website where all the questions that he posed have been answered, to review the meetings where all the questions he posed have been answered, to reach out to any council member and ask him or her respectfully, have you gotten the answers? The unanimous response would be yes, although I do respect that some might say it's not the answer I wanted, therefore I don't support. Totally fine. City Clerk. City Clerk? We tied on that one.
What's that?
I said we tied on that one.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor? Aye. Paschke?
Aye.
Swanson?
Nay.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Nay.
Kilberg? Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Ordinance 2024-28 has been approved by this council with 7 affirmative votes, 3 nay votes, no alderpersons absent. Item 3, public comment. We invite anyone joining us this evening to share with us your thoughts at the podium. Feel free to share your name. Your address is not required. This is your chance to speak, our chance to listen. Good evening.
Good evening. Maureen McKeo, 1568 Kirkwood Drive. I'd like to, you've talked about TIF, and leading up to this, I've heard talk about one of the city's plan, the Southeast Master Plan, and I've also heard talk of diverse tax base. I'd like to talk to you about, briefly, about another kind of thing that should be diverse in our city, about another use of TIF, and also about another plan. Let's start with the other plan. The city has the Southeast Master Plan. There's been much talk and much reference to that. The city also has an affordable housing plan. That is a plan it submitted to the state of Illinois, was required to submit because it did not meet diverse housing requirements, which are minimal, I might add. That plan has not been referenced, surprisingly to me. It may be that you don't even know of it. You may not see it. That plan called for 2 properties that you have agreed to lead to development to be affordable housing sites. There are only a few sites in the approved affordable housing plan. There are not many in Geneva at all. The two largest, one is Venture, one is Bullock. I don't know if when you approved those, you had any knowledge that those two sites were in the affordable housing plan submitted to the state of Illinois as suitable for developing affordable housing. Let's turn to TIF. TIF funds can be used to support affordable housing. I don't know if that has ever entered into anyone's purview, thought about, if staff has worked on it, but that's one way we could have. Let's talk about diverse. There's been much talk about diverse tax base. I submit that diverse housing is a need in Geneva. We have people caring for our children, waiting us on tables, checking out books, serving us in other ways, who cannot afford to live in our house. And I would argue that most of the people who will work in these warehouses will not be able to afford to live in our community. I would suggest that diverse housing may be a greater need than a diverse economic base. The other thing I would say, if you had an economist here, they could tell you how often a dollar turns over in a community when you bring people in and have housing for them. And I would suggest that an economist would tell you it turns over much more and you get more tax base from housing and children and families than you do from warehouses. I don't think that's been adequately looked at. And I don't say that because anybody didn't want to look at it or has an agenda not to look at it. I'm just struck by what does not come before you, including the affordable housing plan, when you are looking at sites that would be suitable for affordable housing. And these are the Venture and the Bullock sites are the only large sites on the affordable housing plans. The others are tiny little places here and there in Geneva. So there is a plan, there is TIF, there is the thought of diversity. I say it tonight, it doesn't change anything you've done. My only hope would be that it might be part of what you carry around as your intellectual baggage when you continue to try to serve the citizens of Geneva. Some of them aren't even here yet, and they could have been better served. Thank you.
From the dais, any new business? How about a motion to adjourn tonight's special city council meeting? Marks makes that motion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, folks. The microphones are off and the cameras are off.